Great morning, my dear friends. Bhupesh and this side. Lecture number 5, we are going to start with. We are doing corporate finance. We are doing reading 38, and within that, the main name is working capital management. Working capital management. And when I say working capital management, I have already told you what is the meaning of working capital and what is the meaning of long-term capital. So the funds required by the entity for smooth functioning of an operating activities. I will say that something is working capital. And we were doing, in last lecture number 4, we have started learning outcome number B. Learning outcome number B. And when I say learning outcome number B in lecture number 4, I told you what are the different types of liquidity measures, how to calculate a liquidity of an entity, what are the tools with the help of which we can have a sense that how much liquidity this entity has. So I have told you current ratio we can calculate quick ratio, we can calculate cash ratio, and then I told you about something about debtors turnover, inventory turnover ratio, inventory turnover, or how much average inventory we have a stock of how many days. Similarly, how many average debtors we have. So we have calculated average inventory, average debtors, that is inventory, that is how much stock this entity keeps for the inventory. And I have given the example of west side and a normal fashion garment seller. So now I'm going to start with something more, in learning outcome number B, we have to discuss 2 or 3 more concepts. One is creditors turnover ratio, and second is operating cycle, and then with the help of that, net operating cycle. So I will be basically telling you 3 concepts: creditors turnover ratio, operating cycle, and net operating cycle. Now what I mean by creditors turnover ratio? So I think you must be aware that inventory turnover ratio means, what is the meaning of inventory turnover ratio and what is the formula for that? Cost of goods sold upon average inventory. This is the formula I have derived for you, that how we have calculated this formula. And when I say cost of goods sold upon average inventory, and when I say 6 times, let it be 6 times. I have just assumed 6 times. Then with the help of 6 times, I can easily say that average inventory, number of days, how many number of days of average inventory we keep. And for that, I told you 365 upon inventory turnover ratio. So like this, I can say 365 upon 6. So with the help of calculator, I can say that it is coming to be 60.83 days. It implies on an average, this entity takes 60.83 days to process the inventory or to convert into accounts receivable. I repeat, I said 2 things. One is to process the inventory, and second is to convert into accounts receivable. Because when I say process, it means how much time period it will take from converting raw material to finished goods. And once those finished goods are ready, how much time it will take from finished goods to selling it, and that is converting into accounts receivable. This whole period, we name it as inventory cycle. So inventory cycle is the time period, is the average inventory which is generally there in case of an organization. And then I told you about debtors turnover ratio, debtors turnover or accounts receivable turnover ratio. That is credit sales upon average debtors, upon average accounts receivable. Let it be 12 times. It implies that in a year, in a 12 months period, 12 times it turns. That is old debtors converted to new and new to old. It means if I want to calculate in number of days, then 365 upon 12. So let me see how much is the figure. 365 upon 12. that comes to 30.41. That comes to 30.41. It means on an average number of debtors or accounts receivable throughout the year is equal to 30.41 days, or I can say within 30.41 days my old debtors will pay and my new debtors will be created. Again, my old debtors will pay and new debtors will be created. For inventory turnover and debtors turnover, I have told you, higher the ratio, better it is. Because from the entity's point of view, we are seeing that if the ratio is higher, inventory turnover ratio is higher, and debtors turnover ratio is higher, it means this company, this entity is enjoying so many merits. The merit number one is popularity of the product. Merit number two is dominating position in the market. Merit number three is lower credit period. Merit number four is good promoters track record. Because then only higher turnover ratio will be there, because it will be beneficial for an entity, because less number of days. When I say higher turnover ratio, it means because I am dividing it by 365. If denominator is higher, if denominator, that is inventory turnover ratio, is higher, or accounts receivable turnover ratio is higher, then the coefficient will be less. And when coefficient will be less, I can say it is a positive for an entity. So let's move to creditors turnover ratio. In today's lecture I want to tell you something about creditors turnover ratio, or I can say accounts payable. Accounts payable. Accounts payable turnover ratio. Now, what is the meaning of accounts payable? It means this entity has purchased raw material from the suppliers. Let these be suppliers. Let these be suppliers of raw material, and they have purchased this raw material on credit. On credit, it means this entity is not investing its own cash, rather getting the goods on credit from the suppliers. Supposingly this entity is A and this entity is B. Now these suppliers give a 3-month credit to entity A and a 4-month credit to entity B. Both A and B are competitors. Common suppliers are there. Now please tell me whether firm A is better or firm B is better. Only with the help of these data, with the help of these numbers. I am talking from the entity point of view. Whether entity A is better or entity B is better. It is but obvious prima facie I can say entity number B is better. Why? Because entity B is getting a longer credit period of 1 month. That is total credit period of 4 months from the suppliers. And entity B is only getting a credit period of 3 months. It means that suppliers have a more trust in firm B as compared to A. And if I see from firm B's point of view, firm B is utilizing suppliers' cash for 4 months. It means they are delaying the payment. It means it is better. So how to calculate creditors turnover ratio? Very simple. Very simple. I have just told you. I will tell you, it is nothing but credit purchases, because payables are related with credit purchases upon average accounts payable. So with the help of this, I can easily calculate that how many times it is. Supposingly it is coming as 8 times. It means in a gap of 12 months, this entity is converting old creditors into new creditors, or paying 8 times the payment. It means, what is a gap in one payment? If in 12 months, payment is 8 times, then how much is the gap between one payment? That will be, or I can say 365, but it will be better if I use 365. So 365 into 1 upon 8. So this is a net result 365. 365 upon 8 comes to 45.62. It means they are getting a credit period of 45.62. Now, supposingly there is another entity whose creditors accounts payable ratio is 10 times. Let it be 10 times. Now, what will be the relevance? Then it will be 365 upon 10. That comes to 36.5. Now, please tell me whether the entity having 8 times as the accounts payable ratio is better, or an entity having 10 times as accounts payable ratio is better. Now, if we calculate in number of days, the days will be 36.5 in that and 35.62 in this. So I will say lower LOWER. In inventory and in debtors turnover, I told you higher the ratio, better it is. But in case of creditors turnover ratio, lower the ratio, better it is. Because lower will be the coefficient, lower will be the denominator, higher will be the coefficient, and higher will be the coefficient. It means I am getting more credit period. You getting the crux? So please write down something. Hope you must have opened your registers, and I have prepared some more slides, some handwritten slides, keeping in mind, your CFA curriculum level number 1 and practice test papers and mock test papers, and on the basis of that I have prepared some handwritten slides. I am not showing you the CFA study material, that I will be showing you the next lecture, because some videos I am uploading in YouTube and there will be a copyright issue in that. So up to this lecture number 5, great morning. Lecture number 5 will be doing with learning outcome number B, and liquidity measures are there, and I have covered this, and today I will be covering with creditors turnover and operating cycle. We have covered all earlier one. So please write down, my dear friend. Please open your register. Last topic of corporate finance, last reading 38 and lecture number 5. I think it will take more 3 or 4 lectures, and this working capital management will be over. So please write down. First point is, what is the meaning of creditors turnover ratio or accounts payable ratio? Accounts payable. How much credit period an entity is enjoying? Actually, this is the crux. How much credit period an entity is enjoying from the suppliers can be calculated by accounts payable turnover ratio. How much credit period an entity is enjoying from the suppliers can be calculated by accounts payable turnover ratio. How much credit is being enjoyed by an entity from the suppliers of raw material is the main crux of accounts payable turnover ratio. Accounts payable is a liability, as we are all aware of, because an entity who is getting the raw material on credit, for that entity it is a liability, and the firm having a larger amount of liability is better because they are utilizing others' cash in their own business. So I have given you a case study. I have prepared a case study by the hard work. Please note down. Please note down, my dear friends. Then you will be able to attempt all practical questions in one go. Let's start reading this and let's write down this case study. Firm A and Firm B. So I have taken the example of 2 firms. And the first number which I have given to you is credit purchases. Because payables, because you have to pay to your suppliers of raw material. And it means they are related with purchases. So credit purchases during the year in dollars million is $100 million and $100 million in both. But the next number I make it as different. Average accounts payable in firm A is 20 and in firm B is 40. Let be accounts payable. Let average accounts payable throughout the year in firm A is 20 million and in firm B is 40 million. Now, if I see just this point, I can say prima facie that firm B is better because firm B has a higher liability, because firm B is enjoying a longer credit period from suppliers as compared to A. So on the basis of that, I have written some interpretation. So please write out this interpretation. Then only you will find out that when it is higher the better and when it is lower the better. So prima facie we can say firm B is doing better because firm B is paying cash later than firm A. Accounts payable turnover ratio, I can calculate. I have given you the formula. Credit purchases upon average payables, that is $100 million upon $20 million. That is average accounts payable. $100 million upon $40 million. That comes to 5 times, and that comes to 2.5 times. So when I say 2.5 times, I also mean that they are paying after 146 days and firm A is paying after 73 days. Now tell me which firm is better. If I don't take into consideration other factors, if I just put focus light on creditors to accounts payable turnover ratio, I will say that firm B is enjoying a longer credit period of 146 days as compared to 73 days in firm A. So firm B is better. Please write down. Please write down, my dear friend. This is creditors accounts payable turnover ratio. So I have discussed 3 ratios. The most important: inventory turnover ratio, debtors turnover ratio, and that is accounts receivable turnover ratio, and accounts payable turnover ratio. Now I'm switching to next concept named as operating cycle. As I've told you, working capital is something, the capital which is required to operate for smooth functioning of operating activities. For smooth functioning of operating activities. Now when I say smooth functioning of operating activities, it means the main business, it means the primary business, it means how much time it took to convert to complete this cycle. That is named as operating cycle. That is supposedly entity A has purchased material and then processed into finished good and then sold into and then convert into accounts receivable and then receive cash from accounts receivable. How much is the time period taken for this journey? That is named as operating cycle. So it is the time period taken by an entity. It is the time period taken by an entity to convert. It is a time period taken by inventory to convert inventory to accounts payable, to accounts receivable, and from accounts receivable to cash. So please prepare a picture in your mind that firstly this entity will be purchasing raw material, then will be processing to inventory finished goods, then will be trying to sell that, and then after selling that, it means it has converted to accounts receivable. So journey from here to here to here up to accounts receivable. This journey that is named as operating cycle. So it can be calculated in days. Easily we can calculate. How we can calculate? Number of days in inventory plus number of days in accounts receivable. If I add these two numbers, so please prepare a graph, please prepare a flow chart. Inventory to accounts receivable and accounts receivable to inventory 60 days and 60 days. From inventory to accounts receivable 60 days and from accounts receivable to inventory 60 days. So we can easily calculate gross operating cycle. So please write down, my dear friend. A firm has inventory processing time of 60 days. I have assumed that in this flow chart, I have assumed that let the processing time of an inventory be 60 days. When I say processing, it means converting raw material to work in progress and from work in progress to finished good. That is in the sellable position. That is that time period, and the time taken to sell it. It will require some time period. That is inventory time period. So that is inventory processing time. Let it be 60 days, and let we have given the credit of 60 days to debtors. It means we will be getting cash. It means the gross operating cycle will be 120 days. It means we have started the journey from T0 and my journey will complete on 120th day. So the total cycle is named as operating cycle, and that is 120 days. Suppose accounts receivable took another 60 days to pay cash. So total operating cycle, I will say operating cycle of the business is 60 days plus 60 days is equal to 120 days. 60 days plus 60 days is equal to 120 days. So I want to tell you a new concept named as net operating cycle. Now, what is the meaning of net operating cycle? So for that, I firstly want to explain you something. You know, in reality, this entity has purchased inventory, and in case this company has paid cash at T0, that is after paying cash they have purchased inventory and then they have converted into accounts receivable, then journey from here to here is named as operating cycle. That is okay, but in real case also this entity can also get the inventory on credit. We have just discussed creditors turnover ratio. So it means I have assumed 60 days here and 60 days here. Supposedly 40 days is the credit period which is being given by suppliers to these persons. So how much will be net operating cycle? I will say 60 plus 60. Earlier I told you that is 120 days. Now I will tell you 120 minus 40, that comes to 80 days. It means net operating cycle will be 80 days. It is not 120 days. So the same concept I have just written for you. Please write down so that we can move forward. Net operating cycle. It implies how much did the firm took in order to convert cash into cash. It implies how much time did the firm took in order to convert cash into cash. It means cash into cash. It means cash received minus I have started from cash. How much time it took from cash into cash? It means if I paid after 40th day, it means 60 minus 40, that comes to 20 plus 60, 80 days. 80 days is the net operating cycle. Let me explain you. I have prepared a timeline for you. Let this be T0 and let this be T60 and let this be T60 120. That is 60 days for accounts inventory and 60 days for accounts receivable. In the first scenario, I have told you 120 days is the operating cycle. If assuming that an entity has paid cash on T0, but supposedly an entity has paid cash at 40th day. It means inventory cycle will be 20 and 60. So 20 plus 60 is equal to 80, or I can calculate 60 plus 60 minus 40. That again comes to 80. The logic is that the firm is enjoying credit of 40 days and paying cash after 40 days. So 20 days will be the inventory cycle. Plus 60 days for accounts receivable, that comes to 80. Or you can do directly also as per CFA curriculum level number 1. That is, they are doing inventory cycle, inventory processing time plus accounts processing time, accounts receivable processing time minus accounts payable processing time. So that again comes to 80 days. The logic is, if you are getting the goods on credit, that is to be subtracted. This is the logic. So please write down the concept of net operating cycle. This is the last concept of lecture number 5. Then we will move to lecture number 6. It implies how much time did the firm took in order to convert cash into cash. Cash into cash. Cash into cash. In case an entity also enjoys a credit period of 40 days from suppliers. So I prepared a graph for you because things are better understood in flowchart form. Inventory 60 days, but I have paid after 40th day. Earlier I assumed that I have paid at T0, but if I have assumed to be paid by after 40th day, then 60 days minus 40 days, that comes to 20 days is a net, or I can directly say 20 plus 60 the 80, or 60 plus 60 minus 40. Please prepare a graph also. And net operating cycle can be calculated with the help of this formula, but there is no need to cram the formula. I have just told you the logic. Number of days in inventory plus number of days in accounts receivable minus number of days in accounts payable. That is the net formula for calculating net operating cycle. So let's start a practical example. I want to test that whether you have understood or not. I will be giving you 3 ratios: inventory turnover ratio, accounts receivable ratio, turnover ratio, and accounts payable turnover ratio. Inventory turnover ratio, I will say let it be 3 times. and let accounts receivable turnover ratio be 2 times, and let accounts payable turnover ratio be 1.5 times. 3, 2 and 1.5. Now, if I want to calculate operating cycle and net operating cycle, if I want to calculate operating cycle, it means I am paying cash at 0 T0. That is inventory cycle plus debtor cycle. But for that, firstly, we have to calculate number of days in inventory and number of days in debtors. And for that, 365 days I am upon inventory turnover ratio, 365 days upon debtors turnover, accounts receivable turnover ratio, and 365 upon accounts payable turnover ratio. So very easy, I have written for you. First, we will calculate number of days in inventory, number of days in accounts receivable, number of days in accounts payable, and then, for example, I have calculated 121.66 days. Please use the calculator, my dear sir. 365. 365 upon 3, that comes to 121.66. Then the number of days in accounts receivable, 365 upon 2, 182.5. Number of days in accounts payable, 365 upon 1.5, that comes to 243.3. So, on the basis of that, we can calculate operating cycle. I will only add inventory and debtors, accounts receivable. And in net operating cycle, I will add inventory plus accounts receivable minus accounts payable. So that is 60.86. It means from cash to cash, the time period required is 60.86. So like this, we have covered learning outcome number B. That is, what are the liquidity measures? And then we will compare these liquidity measures of this entity with the peer companies. Hope you have enjoyed lecture number 5. So we will meet again in lecture number 6. Be happy, be jolly. Please open your registers. You have to write down something. I prepared some 2 or 3 slides for you. Reading 38, working capital management. working capital management, and these are the learning outcomes which we will be discussing. 7 learning outcomes are there. So as per the CFA curriculum level number 1, as per reading 38, they want that you should be aware of these things. That is first learning outcome which we have discussed. Describe primary and secondary sources of liquidity and factors that influence a company's liquidity position. So what are those factors? What are those factors? And what are the primary sources? What are the secondary sources? We have already covered. Second is compare company liquidity measures with those of peer companies. So I have told you how to calculate liquidity measures, how to calculate the ratios, and how to compare it with your peer companies, creditors turnover ratio, debtors turnover ratio, and all that. And learning outcome C, actually we have started learning outcome C in lecture number 5 only. So today we will be concluding that. Learning outcome C is evaluate working capital effectiveness of a company. Working capital, please underline working capital effectiveness, that how effectively a company has managing working capital based on its operating and cash conversion cycles. It means there are two cycles, operating cycles and cash conversion cycles, and compare the company's effectiveness with that of peer companies. So my dear friend, this is most important learning outcome number C, that calculate whether this company is properly, effectively utilizing its working capital, and along with that, compare the working capital effectiveness of this company with peer companies. So I will be starting delivering this lecture. So lecture number 6, a very small lecture is there, 10 to 15 minutes. I will be taking the help of case studies and telling you what is the meaning of working capital effectiveness. I have told you that when I say working capital, it means the funds required for required for smooth functioning of operating activities. Smooth functioning of operating activities, that is named as working capital. Now the point is, we have discussed the operating cycle. What is the meaning of operating cycle? Because an entity has to keep some amount of inventory, and cash is being paid by accounts receivable after a gap. So if we add these two, I will say this is operating cycle. But then we have calculated cash operating cycle. When I say cash operating cycle or cash conversion cycle, then I have told you that in reality, sometimes you purchase your raw material on credit and you pay after that credit period. It means as an entity you are getting a credit from your suppliers. It means you are not paying cash from the T0 period, and it is being paid after a particular time interval. It is cash conversion cycle, that converting cash to cash. It means you have purchased inventory at this point, but you have not paid inventory at this point. You have paid to suppliers at this point, and you have received cash at this point. It means the period in which you have received the cash credit from your suppliers, that is not to be considered. So when I say cash conversion cycle, it means the time period I have paid the cash is with respect to the time period I have received the cash from accounts receivable. So for this, I have told you inventory processing time plus average receivable processing time minus average payable. This is named as cash conversion cycle. So this is named as cash conversion cycle, the time period required from converting cash to cash. We can also discuss like this, that firstly we have cash, we have purchased inventory for that, and it took some time to convert inventory into finished goods and then to sell it, and then we have converted into accounts receivable, and then we have received the cash. But if I deduct the creditors, the average payable, because we have received some credit also. So cash conversion cycle is converting cash to cash. Now if I give you example that supposingly this is ABC and this is XYZ, let me take the example of two companies, and an operating cycle operating cycle is 30 days for ABC and 45 days for XYZ. Can you tell me on the basis of just operating cycle which company is doing good? It is but obvious that company ABC is doing good because operating cycle is only 30 days. When I say 30 days, it is the total of inventory conversion cycle plus debtors average.
Great morning. You are
that
planning
total is named as 30 days. It means they can easily
सेशन
convert
फॉर
their cash into 30 days.
तो बेटे आप लाइव
But if I
जरूर आए,
compare XYZ,
मैं यहाँ
it has
पर
a
आपके
longer
सामने
operating cycle. So the concept is shorter the
Tuesday,
operating cycle,
Thursday
it is
and
better
Saturday.
and it is more effectively you are utilizing your working capital. More effectiveness is there. So the benchmark is the shorter the working capital cycle, lower will be the funds invested in working capital and better it is, smarter it is. So like this we can interpret on the basis of working capital cycle, and then I have told you the meaning of cash conversion cycle. Cash conversion cycle. That is the time period required from payment of cash to receipt of cash. That is named as cash conversion cycle, and we will supposedly let it be 10 days, let it be 50 days, and let it be 70 days. Again, tell me which company is better on the basis of cash conversion cycle. Again, I will say company ABC is better because cash is being converted into cash within 50 days as compared to XYZ. Cash is converted into cash within 70 days. So my dear friend, just I want to tell you that on the basis of operating cycle and on the basis of cash conversion cycle, we can easily interpret and we can easily say which is the better. Now, as per this learning outcome number C, we have to see whether this working capital is being effectiveness. We have to check the working capital effectiveness of peer companies with respect to peer companies. So please take out your registers. There are 2 or 3 slides which we have to write down. Very simple, So let's start with that journey. A very small journey in today's lecture number 6. So I am writing down learning outcome. I have written learning outcome C. Evaluate working capital effectiveness. That how effectively that working capital is being utilized in a company. Of a company based on operating and cash conversion cycle. So there are 2 cycles. One is operating cycle, when I add inventory plus average receivable, account receivable cycle. The cash conversion cycle, that is inventory cycle plus account receivable cycle minus average people cycle. So let's start with the journey. Point number 1. You know that, I know that you know operating cycle, but still write down first point. It is the time taken to convert inventory into cash. It is the time taken to convert inventory into cash. It is the time taken to convert inventory into the cash that is named as operating cycle. In this, I am assuming that I have paid cash at T0. That is, I have not taken the goods of inventory on credit. It means I am paying cash for those inventory at that point of interval, that is at T0. So this is the prime assumption, inherited assumption behind this logic. So operating cycle is the time taken to convert inventory into cash. So I have prepared a timeline. Average inventory, average number of days or average days of inventory plus average days of average accounts receivable. If I total them, supposedly average days of inventory is 50 days and average days of receivable is 20 days. So I will say operating cycle is 70 days. 70. Please write down. Operating cycle is 50 days plus 20 days. But the assumption but the implied assumption is I have paid cash on the same day when I purchase inventory. But in real life, we also get some credit. So we will be calculating cash conversion cycle, that how much time period it requires, this entity requires from converting cash to cash. And with the basis of this, we will find out, we will compare with the peer companies and find out that which company is doing smarter work. I will tell you how we can easily find out that which company is doing smarter. Please write down. Please write down, my dear friends. Cash conversion cycle or net operating cycle. Very easy. We have already discussed number of days in inventory plus number of days in account receivable minus number of days in accounts payable. This is the formula which we will be using. Supposingly, I have prepared a scenario example, one for you, a diagram for you, a timeline for you. Let T0 be this, let T40 is inventory cycle, let T70, total is T70 because we are preparing timeline. It means 30 days is accounts receivable period, 40 days is inventory, and supposingly we have paid cash to creditors after 50th day, 50th day. It means we are getting credit on raw material from suppliers for 50 days. So how I will calculate cash conversion cycle? Very simple. 40 plus 30 or total 70 minus 50, that comes to 20 days. Shorter the cycle, shorter the operating cycle or shorter the cash conversion cycle, better it is. So please write down example number 1. I have shown in the timeline format 20 days. Now I am going to example number 2 and I will show you the real case study that whether cash conversion cycle can be negative also. Yes, and if cash conversion cycle is negative, whether it is a positive sign or a negative sign, I will tell you it is a positive sign. If cash conversion cycle is negative, it implies that you are utilizing the cash in the best effective manner. We will show you, I will tell you with the help of a case study. Before that, just write down this example number 2. T0, T40, T70, T0, T40, T70. The same example. 40 days with the average balance of inventory, 30 days with the average accounts receivable, 40 plus 30, that comes to 70. And supposedly, instead of getting a credit of 50 days, I have assumed that I am getting a credit of 90 days. Because of my dominating position, I am able to negotiate with my suppliers and able to get a credit of 90 days. So now the point is, how much is the cash conversion cycle? It is coming as negative 20 days. Can it be negative? Yes, it can be negative. It means you can enjoy with others' cash also if you have a good brand in the market, image in the market, trust in the market. So now minus 20 is this. It means an entity is using the funds free of cost for 20 days. It means the best effective manner is this as compared to the peer companies. Firms having negative cash conversion cycle are converted to be smarter. It means they are more smarter than other companies. If you are clearing your CFA level 1, level 2, level 3 within a shorter span, it means you are more smarter than other persons as compared to other peer your friends. So cash management and working capital management process is effective. Now with the help of a case study, I will tell you how it is effective. Now with the help of a case study, I want to tell you how it is effective. We will draw this case study, but before that, just see to me that what I am saying. I think in the lecture number 1, I have told you that supposedly this is an entity, and this entity is able to acquire $1,000 as capital, and it is being divided into 2 parts. Let $700 million being invested in land, in building, and $300 being invested in working capital, that is for inventory or in accounts receivable or in accounts payable. Now for a understanding purpose, I am just assuming that if this entity, instead of investing like this, supposedly out of $1,000 million, they have invested $1,000 of land, plant and machinery and nil in working capital. But why nil? Just I am telling you, please listen to me. Supposedly this entity able to negotiate with the suppliers that they will be getting a credit of 90 days from the suppliers, and supposedly this entity has an operating cycle of 45 days. That is inventory cycle plus accounts receivable cycle is 45 days. And they are getting a credit of 90 days from their suppliers. It means what will happen after, after 45 days. Now see to me. You have received the inventory and the credit period is 90 days. So inventory is piling up here. Now within 45 days, you are able to sell that and receive the cash. It means you have received the cash. That is, let the sale be $500. Let the sale be $500 and let the inventory you have purchased be $500 from your suppliers. You getting my point? If you just put 2 minutes, 2 sincere minutes can save you 6 months. I want to tell you the logic because with the help of a case study. That's $500. Let the inventory purchased by this entity from the suppliers be $500 on a credit of 90 days and let the inventory and working and accounts receivable cycle be 45 days. It means after 45 days, they will realize $500. But they have not to pay because they have to pay after 45 days. Now with this same $500, they have again purchased land or building. Now the total investment in land and building is 100 plus 1000 plus 500. That comes to $1,500. Because earlier $1,000 they have invested total amount in land, building and plant and machinery. Now 500 they realized from the debt account receivable. That again 500 is being deposited in.
Great morning, my dear friends.
Or land and building has
Build the
purchased.
develop. Beta
And
हमने days
at the
रखे.
same time, this entity is able to negotiate with supplier number B. Let this be supplier number A. Now there are two suppliers of raw material. First is supplier number A from where they got 90 days as credit. Now after 45 days when they have realized $500 of sales, they are negotiating with supplier number B, and from supplier number B they are able to get a credit again of 90 days. And they have converted that and sold that and realized the cash within 45 days. From this cash of $500, they have paid to supplier number A because 90 days must have been expired. Now the point is, once they have paid to this supplier, again they have realized they have taken the new consignment of goods of $500 on 46th day, and they have received a credit again of 90 days. Now again they will process it. And then after 45 days, they will again invest in plant and machinery. And then in the next 45 days, they will again pay to this vendor number B. And then vendor A, vendor B, vendor C. Like this, they will be changing the caps. They will rotating the amount of fund from vendor A to vendor B and investing and depositing and purchasing land, building and plant and machinery. It means they are not utilizing their own working capital. Rather, they are getting the credit from supplier A, supplier B, supplier C. So this is the best manner. This is the smarter way of managing your working capital effectively. So please write down this case study. As compared to peer companies, this is the best way of doing it. So just write down again the case study, very important case study. I have prepared an entity. Total capital is $1,000, which is broken down to $700 and $300 in the original example. But in this example, I have assumed that $1,000 capital is totally invested in land, building, plant and machinery, and working capital as nil, and entity managed to acquire $500 for 90 days from vendor X. Suppose in 45 days, its operating cycle is inventory plus account receivable. Operating cycle is, this is not cash conversion cycle. There's a difference between cash conversion cycle and operating cycle. Let this be 45 days with the operating cycle and let 90 days with the cash credit received from the suppliers. So now entity invested $100 for, because after 45 days they will be realizing $500 of sales from account receivables from the debtors, from account receivables. Now they are investing that 500 again in purchasing plant and machinery. So that comes to 1500. Again, they will be finding out a new vendor X or Y. Then they will be again getting a credit of 90 days. It means they are rotating the capital from here to here. This is the best manner. This is the smarter way of doing as compared to peer companies. So we can conclude that with the help of operating cycle. With the help of cash conversion cycle, we can find out whether the company is performing well or not as compared to peer companies. So like this, I have covered learning outcome A, learning outcome B, and learning outcome C, learning outcome A, learning outcome B, and learning outcome C. And we have seen that how an entity can rotate and